Hi, and welcome to part 1 of the introduction to the Gospel according to St. Luke. There are 3 parts, and in each of these 5-minute sections, we're hoping to take you behind Luke and get you to understand the context in which it was written, a little bit about the book, before in church we spend the next 7 Sundays or so looking at some of the people that Jesus encountered in that book. So part 1, let's begin. First of all is, when we talk about 4 Gospels, there actually is only one Gospel, and there are 4 accounts, of which Luke is one. 3 of them, that's Matthew, Mark and Luke, are called synoptics, and that simply means that they're looking at things from the same perspective. And then we've John's Gospel, that's written much later, and rather than be simply an observation of the life of Jesus, it's a much more theologically based piece of writing. It's important to say that none of the 4 Gospel accounts are biographies, but they do include some of the details about the life of Jesus. But it's important that they are selective accounts. And even when we put all 4 together, we don't get a full account of the life of Jesus. Each of the 4 accounts, including Luke, were written for a particular context, and that's important when we begin to read each of the Gospels, in this case, the Gospel according to Luke. Luke himself wasn't an eyewitness, but a number of those, such as Mark and John, were eyewitnesses. All the Gospel accounts use sayings of Jesus and stories of Jesus, and we'll come back to that a little bit later on. Each of the accounts of the Gospel follows roughly the same timeline. You've got the birth and the early years of Jesus, and Luke, for example, focuses on Mary, and Matthew focuses on Joseph. Luke takes us back to Adam, whereas Matthew takes us back to Abraham when they're looking at the genealogy, so they're different. Jesus' 3 years of ministry, the first year is a bit like an obscure year when he's really only becoming known. Then there's a year of popularity where people are beginning to hear about him and he's being heralded as potentially the king or the Messiah. And then his final year is the year of adversity, and it ends, of course, with the death and resurrection of Jesus. Luke is the only one of the 4 Gospel accounts that actually includes the Ascension. So how was Luke written? Well, Mark is probably the first Gospel to have been written around 60 AD, and in total Mark has 661 verses. It's the shortest of the 4 Gospel accounts. When we look at Matthew, he has over 1,000 verses, and Luke has over 1,100 verses. But the interesting thing is that Matthew's Gospel includes 91% of what's in Mark. Luke's Gospel account includes over half of what's recorded in Mark. And then Matthew and Luke together have about 200 verses that are actually not mentioned anywhere. So how do you solve the problem? Well, most people think that Mark was written first in Rome in the late 50s or early 60s. Matthew then had Mark, and he used it just like you would do if you were doing a piece of research, and he was writing for a Jewish audience from Antioch. Luke was writing from Caesarea. He was writing for a Gentile audience about the same time. And then they had another source, and that source is normally called the Book of Sayings, or Kella, which is the German really for source. So in fact, Luke was written after Mark was written and about the same time as Matthew. I hope you've enjoyed this, and next time we'll be going on to look at a little bit of the historical context and about why Luke particularly wrote his account. Thanks for listening.